Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. We want to look at 1 Samuel chapter 16, 1 through 13, and other verses this morning. Paul, Apostle Paul, is standing in front of a synagogue full of strangers, and he's got maybe 30 seconds to sum up the most famous king Israel ever had. That's David. You and I remember David, someone who fought Goliath, the giant, his military campaigns. And we associate David with these things, running from Saul, Bathsheba, and Solomon. But Paul leaves all of that out. Here's what he says: David had done the will of God in his own generation. He died and was buried with his ancestors, and his body decayed. Acts 13:36. Paul encapsulated David's entire life into three words: served, generation, died. Think about a relay race for a second. 4 runners, 1 baton. You've been handed the baton on the third stretch. Somebody chose the order, somebody chose the lane. You didn't pick the baton. You didn't pick the runner who handed it to you, or the lane you're standing in, or how tired your legs already were before your stretch even started. All of that got decided before you came to the race. So what are you in control of in that race? What's the one thing you get to control? Just this: how hard you run with what's already in your hand for exactly as long as your race lasts before you hand it off and let somebody else worry about the finish. David got handed a baton nobody would have chosen for him. Remember, he's the youngest of 8 sons out in a field with the sheep, while his own father didn't think to call him in when prophet Samuel came looking for a king that day. Do you remember that? Bethlehem, an overlooked family, the job nobody else wanted. He didn't negotiate any of it. He just ran. Notice the word Paul uses, served. He could have used other words, like achieved, performed, or even built a legacy. But he used the word served. David ran his whole life towards something bigger than himself, as hard as he could for exactly as long as he had. And then he handed the baton off. That's the whole point in this verse. David's life doesn't get measured by what he built. It gets measured by whether he ran the race he was handed in the years he had, with whatever strength was in him that day. And here's the part that changes how you hear the rest of this. The race was already marked out for him before he ever touched the baton. Paul says it works the same way for rest of us, centuries later, in a letter to a completely different church. He writes, "We are God's workmanship, created anew in Christ Jesus to do the good things he planned for us long ago." Ephesians 2:10. Planned long ago, before the baton ever got to your hand. Your job was never to invent the purpose. It was to run the one already marked out in front of you. So stop measuring your life by how big the platform gets. Measure it by whether you serve the people God put in your path this week, with whatever strength you had that day, and let that be enough. That's the coworker nobody else wants to sit with at lunch. That's putting the phone down for 20 minutes tonight instead of tomorrow. That's the parent in the nursing home who won't remember you visited by next week, and you go anyway, because that's the stretch you were handed. Now, there's a second half to David's sentence. Remember, David ran his race as well as any human being ever has. He served his people, handed off the baton, and then he died, the way every runner eventually does. But Paul isn't finished. He goes on to say it was a reference to someone else, someone whom God raised and whose body did not decay. Acts 13:37. David served his generation and then decayed in the grave like every man who ever lived. Jesus served every generation, all of them, past, present, and future, and walked out of the grave instead, rose, resurrected. So my friends, run your race this week. Serve whoever is right in front of you, and rest easy about the parts you were never meant to control. The race doesn't end with you. It never did. It ends with the one who already finished it, rose from the dead, and is still working in our lives. I hope that blessed you. I hope this whole series blessed you as we study the life of King David. This is the last episode. For now, I'm going to take a week or maybe a week and a half break, and then we'll come back with a fresh new series as we continue this devotional this year. God bless you, and until we see each other again, may God be the guiding light in your life, and may Christ be pleased with our lives.